Hey there, true believers. Thanks for joining with another episode of Monstrous, the podcast. This episode's been a long time in the making, and we finally got the one, the only Joedy Cook to come on board. And he's going to talk with us for a little bit. And I'm really feeling special having Joedy on here today. Mr. Joedy, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing good, sir. About yourself?
I'm doing just fine, and it's really nice to have you here. So, for all of
Happy to
those
be here.
people out there who don't know who Joedy Cook is, who is Joedy Cook?
I'm a cryptozoologist. Been doing it for a little over 30 years, and I really fell in love with it. I think with most people, it was either a movie or a show that kind of got them into it. And my thing was when I was a kid, I saw The Legend of Boggy Creek. Scared that crap out of me and stuff. And I mean, that's where I really got into the Bigfoot because they're kind of like some woods by the house I was growing up in, and would go out there and I would just have a fun time, looking for Bigfoot, hoping to find them. I'm just a kid, and it's just something that kind of stayed with me, and I was always fascinated with, the monsters, because you always heard about, the Loch Ness monster, the abominable snowman, things like that, when you were a kid back in the 70s. And there was a lot of movies. And it's you think to yourself that, if they're making a movie about it, this thing, they got to be real, And that's how I kind of got into it. And it was just always an interest there. I would read whatever I could on the subject. I would watch whatever movie, that came out or something on TV, about it. And it's just something I just fell in love with.
Yeah, you're in about the same boat I am. I was one of the kids of the 70s and the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
growing up with In Search of and
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff. So yeah, we were the ones who, start off thinking, well, Bigfoot's over there in California if it exists, and the Loch Ness monster is over in Scotland, and and then we got the thing with Boggy Creek, which happened down in
Mm-hmm.
southern Arkansas, which I'm in Arkansas. But yeah, you wanted to go looking for monsters, but you always think, well, they're never really out here, and until you get like the local reports where you start hearing something about,
Exactly.
well, so and so saw something, and yeah. So from there, where did your monster paranormal UFO path lead you?
Well, the UFO part was really interesting because when I was in school in 1972, I was in grade school, and there was a really big flap, UFO flap, you know,
Hmm.
across the whole country. And I remember in art class, the art teacher said, draw a picture, artwork of what you think a UFO or an alien looks like. And that was like, man, that was like the greatest day of my life. And so it was fun. And, I got into it. It was always something I always be a part of. And, as I was getting older, I was getting involved in different groups, that dealt with the subject. Now, when it comes to cryptids, they're really in the 70s and the 80s, um, even going up into the 90s, they weren't a whole lot of big groups. I mean, MUFON was around. That was the biggest UFO group. And you had a bunch of smaller UFO groups. But when it came to cryptids, they really weren't anything. I think at going into the late 80s, going into the 90s, I think the Bigfoot Research Project, out of Washington State, was like the only big thing, Bigfoot stuff that was going on at the time. There was conferences and, there were small little get-togethers and stuff, but not really like organizations, at that
Right.
time. But the UFO field had a lot of them. And so I decided to get into this one group here in Cincinnati, which was called ASK, Scientists for Associates for Scientific Knowledge. And we put a newsletter out. And the neat thing about this show, or that this group, is back in the 80s and even going into the 90s, cable TV wasn't real expanded in certain parts, but you had public asset TV,
Right.
And we did a live UFO show the first Wednesday of every month. Lasted 10 years. And it was great. We had guests coming in. You could call into the show with your experience, ask questions of the guests, and just ask questions of the panel. And it was just really interesting. It was fun because we got a lot of stuff. And then we started to get UFO reports that had Bigfoot connections. Okay. And then we started to get a lot of these Bigfoot reports. And myself and George Clapperson, who was one of the associates, on the team, we decided, let's go and look into the Bigfoot stuff. That's interesting. There got to be something to it. Is it a UFO connection, or, are people just seeing them as a coincidence at the time of a UFO, sighting took place?
Right.
So we decided to go in there, and we just fell in love with it, man. I mean, we just got so obsessed with it. I'm not kidding. I mean, every weekend we were going out. I can honestly say, I gave up time that I should have been spending with my family, to go do this, but a lot of people who are getting into the field, can relate to what I'm saying, because the beginning part getting into it is a session rather. And we started to get a lot of reports about Bigfoot in Ohio. We kind of stayed with Ohio, and then we started to expand out a little bit, which was great. We were doing that for years. And then the field started to get really political. It became a clique, It's the same people doing the conferences over and over. There was a lot of, bias. There was a lot of, jealousy in the field. Perfect example, Ohio, they had a Bigfoot conference that ran for almost, 20 years, up at Salt Fork. And, you had a lot of different Ohio researchers that were doing good stuff. I mean, at the time, I had a book, that came out about Bigfoot in Ohio that a lot of people loved. A lot of people were wanting copies of it. It got revised, and that kind of made a lot of people jealous. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that wasn't the point. The point was is to put out information.
Right.
Okay. That's it. And, I never got to do the conference. I was one of the top Bigfoot researchers in Ohio. I had a book. I've been on TV. I've done so much stuff, and it's just like, no, because you're doing better than me, then no. And that's how it came. And that's how the field basically turned. And that's how the field is today, because you can look at all the different Bigfoot conferences that are taking on. It's the same people.
Oh, you're right.
The same people. And they don't, and these people who run these conferences are good people. Don't get me wrong. They're good people, good researchers. They have good intentions, but they're there to make a profit, to break even off the conference.
Yes.
Okay. So you can't really hold that against them. But with that being said, when they're talking about the same thing at every single conference, it kind of gets old.
Yes.
And they don't want somebody who doesn't have the right last name or belong to the correct group to get notoriety for something that they feel someone else should be getting notoriety for. Okay.
Yep.
That's what the problem And that's the biggest problem with the Bigfoot community. Okay. There's a whole lot of, it's a clique, you know,
Yep.
and I just got tired of it.
Yep.
I'm saying to myself, I mean, I'm busting my butt trying to put out information, trying to, you know, do my research, have people look at my research. I wasn't doing anything to make money off of it. I wasn't doing anything to, to someone give me a that a boy or ooh and ah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was none of that. It was just I wanted to participate and give to the community like a lot of other researchers.
Right.
Okay. And it just got to the point where it's just like it didn't turn out that way. And like I said, it's just, if you don't have the right last name, belong to the right group, or you didn't write the right, best book or, whatever. And it just got ridiculous. So I found this new subject, which was Dogman, which I found was very interesting. And I decided to go that route. And it's been great. It's been really great.
Now, how did you kind of stumble upon the Dogman route? Was it something that was already there and you decided to kind of take that route,
Well,
or?
it was kind of already there because, I mean, I was getting reports back in the 80s of Bigfoot having a snout or having legs like a dog or having high pointed ears. And I was wondering, is this a new breed of Bigfoot? Is this a deformed Bigfoot? He has a snout. Does he have a snout because he has a protrude snout like a primate? Or is this a different breed where he has like a snout like a dog?
Right.
Okay. And that was some of the biggest things because back in the 80s, and especially in the 90s, the only Dogman stuff that was going on was the Beast of Bray Road and the Michigan Dogman.
Right.
And you had the Defiance, Ohio case that took place in 1972. And that made international news. But those were the two main ones. And that was just the main two areas that where the sightings were taking place. Okay.
Right.
So not too many other sightings were taking place across the country. They were, but they weren't getting recognized as what they were. They were being misidentified as Bigfoot.
Right.
Okay. And I learned that through my research. And like I said, I can go back today to look at my files that I have going back from the 80s and just, even back in the 70s, reports that, this was a Dogman. This is 100% a Dogman that people are seeing. But they weren't, I don't think back in, the 50s, 60s, 70s, they were a whole lot of them at the time. Same thing with Bigfoot. I think with land management on development, destroying their environment, brought out a lot more sightings, pushing them more towards the communities and small towns, things like that. And now we're getting like a ton of sightings.
Right.
And so with that it's now we're getting, like I said, we're getting, a lot more sightings. But back in the 70s and 80s, we weren't getting anything. There were stuff out there. Perfect example was Germantown, Ohio. Back in the 70s, they built a street going into the woods called, Butter Street. And it was like one of the very first, communities. I mean, Germantown was a community, but we're like a suburb,
right.
They built like in the country,
Right.
farming area. And they built it so far going in, to the woods that people were seeing this creature and they would call it the Butter Street Monster. And this was taking place in the 70s. And it looked like a werewolf is the way people described it. It was a large wolf walking on two legs. But that never made national news until, I think maybe 88, there was a news story about it. And then going into the 90s, there was another one. And then just recently with, going into 2000s, then it started picking up a lot more, along with all these other small communities around the country. So,
Right. So yeah. So if somebody were to say, okay, so you've got Sasquatch, who is kind of the poster child for cryptozoology, who everybody kind of knows what Sasquatch looks like. They
right.
think they do anyway. They've got kind of the ballpark figure idea of it. So if we say Dogman, now you and I, we kind of have the idea of what Dogman looks like because we do this. So if the general audience and we're trying to tell them, okay, Dogman, what does Dogman look like?
Dogman basically just look at a wolf, okay? Put him where he's able to walk on two legs. He's also a quadruped where he can go down on all fours, but his front paws are more like a hand. Okay. And he's able to move his arms like a human, where he has elbows and so forth like that. Knees to bend, so forth. Okay. Now, when you look at these movies, like Dog Soldier and Van Helsing and The Howling, people are saying, well, those are images that are sticking in people's heads when they see these things. That's what they're seeing is what's on TV, okay, and in the movies. That's not true, because the image of the werewolf and the howling and dog soldiers and stuff go all the way back, to the 1800s. And we have proof of that because in 1831, in a town in Germany, and I can't think of the town off the top of my head, we have it on our website, there was a werewolf that actually came into town. And people were able to see it. And all the drawings, like in the newspapers, were all wood carvings. Okay. And they would ink on it, and that's how they did it. Well, I got one of the original ink drawings of that werewolf from Germany, and it's identical to what's in the Howling, Dog Soldiers, and Van Helsing. It's typical. And we, like I said, we have it on our website on one of the evidence pages in there, which is really interesting. And this is from 1831 in Europe.
Right.
So that image of what that Dogman looks like goes back at least to the 1800s, if not further back. So what modern TV and movies is getting is what's actually correct through history.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a background in science. I'm a biologist. So, you kind of know my background. I'm sure Todd's talked to you and everything. So anyway, so where I have a problem with part of it, and I can see it, but is with the torso, with the massive pecs, and they always say, well, it looks like it was just came out of the gym. It was built like Arnold Schwarzenegger and everything. How do you account for that?
Here's the thing. When people talk about pecs, I don't think they're talking about muscle. Okay. They're more talking about the massive chest. Okay. Now, I had this theory, about Dogman, and I got it from a lot of reports that people, has submitted, talked to a lot of witnesses. When this thing moved from quadruped to 2 feet, they were popping sounds, pop, 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 like going into separate joints. Okay. So I always believed that there was a separate socket joint in the hip and in the shoulders. Okay. The reason why the chest is so massive, because I believe the sternum, is one massive bone that basically goes across the chest to protect the lungs. And that's when you hear people say, look, I shot this thing point blank range and it did nothing. Well, it has that large bone in its chest that's going to be able to absorb, any gunshot. Like I said, this is just opinion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when people talk about the muscle in the chest, I believe that's what they're talking about, is just a massive chest. Okay. On these creatures. It would have to have a separate joint in its body in order for the arms and the legs to move in a bipedal position.
Correct.
Okay. It would have to, because a dog, you hold a dog, his arms out like this.
Right.
You can go like this. He can't, he can bend his arms and do something like that, but he can't rotate like we can. So
Right.
He would have to have that extra set of joints. Now, is that true? I don't know. Like I said, it's just an opinion. Right. But someone with your education, I mean, you were trained to where you have to see physical evidence in order for you to accept what's going on.
Exactly.
And the thing about science, okay, is that science doesn't like to be proven wrong, because science doesn't want to be rewritten. Okay. And I've always said this: if Bigfoot is found, or if Dogman is ever found, and someone threw it on TV and you had all these scientists look at it, they're going to classify it as something other than what it is. For the simple fact is, they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be rewritten, and they don't want to be corrected.
Well, I would have to agree with you to a degree. I would absolutely agree with you about that, because what you were talking about with cryptozoology and with everything else, at the conferences, and the problems that you have with the names and who's there, you have the exact same thing in science. We always have. So the problem is that scientists are the problem. It's not science that's the problem. It's the ego that gets in the way. So science is a method by which we do things. It's always the human error that gets in the way. So I would agree with you 110% on that. But I often wonder too, if, and I'm a very open-minded person as far as being a scientist too, because I'm, like I said, like you, I started off back in the 70s and the 80s watching the same shows that you did. And, I grew up with, reading about the Mothman and all of that. Yeah. And I think one of the first books I ever got, I sent off for it out of the back of the Enquirer. And I think it was the Monster Hunters Guild or something like that. Yeah, and I sat and read that thing, I'm a pretty open-minded guy. I'm also into folklore, goblins, trolls, all that other fun stuff and everything. So I kind of wonder about the evolutionary process that would lead to a canid becoming upright, because that would require some very interesting things, because it would have to become arboreal.
Right. Here's the thing. History of dog-headed men go back thousands of years.
Yeah.
And every single culture. Okay. Now, how can I say this? The French who came to the United States claim that they brought their version of Dogman, the Loup-garou.
Yeah, Loup-garou, yeah.
Okay. The Chinese claim they brought the Yeren, which was their version of Bigfoot, to the United States when they came over. Because, they were able to train them, to do heavy lifting, things like that. And that's how they got here. They just let them go. They're stories. Okay.
Right.
There's no proof to the stories, but it kind of makes sense that, there's a possibility because we know the Chinese, came to America a long time ago,
Yes.
before, we know that, the French was here. We have proof of that.
Yep.
We have proof that, a lot of different cultures were here long before Christopher Columbus set foot, so we don't know what was brought, with these people and these things being here.
You're right. You're
You
right.
know? So when you look at the origins of dog-headed men, okay, we know Europe. They were in Europe. We know they were in the Middle East. We know that they were in Asia. So we know through stories that they were able to communicate with the people. I mean, when I was in Iraq, I remember talking with, some of the Iraqi soldiers that were interpreters, with us and stuff, and they were talking about, the dog-headed men that lived up in the northern part of the, country that would come down and, trade with people. They were able to understand the language, but they couldn't speak it, but they were able to understand it. They would trade, and that was it.
Right.
So we knew these things existed in different cultures. I mean, you look at St. Christopher. The original St. Christopher had a dog head, and on all the artwork, the pictures in the Vatican Museum.
Mm-hmm.
For God's sake. So we know it existed, and so that means he came from a tribe of dog-headed people.
Right.
Okay. So the possibility that they were, and they had a culture of their own, but we had to figure out how did they get here to the United States, and how did they come from a primitive culture where they're able to trade and communicate to savagery. Okay. Which
Yes.
can be, I mean, it could be done. I mean, you look at feral people in this country, feral people around the world, they went from probably being normal to savage. So
Right.
that's a possibility with the ones that might have were brought here or came here through the Bering Straits, because Canada has a lot of dogman sightings up there, and they
Oh
call
yeah.
them werewolves. So that's a possibility on how they got here. I don't, I talked to Linda Goffrey about this in length a lot of times about, could this been a species of wolf
Mm-hmm.
that had the ability to walk on two legs, be able to do things different than what a normal wolf could do? Just a whole new species that we didn't know about. And
Right.
and she believes that there was some type of canine species that
Mm-hmm.
this thing came from. It had to have been some type of canine species where this thing evolved from. Now, wolves in the United States obviously came from Canada, which came from the Bering Straits. Okay. So that's a possibility that this dog man is a completely different species or breed, rather, of wolf that is much different. Okay.
Right.
Perfect example, you being a biologist, you might
Mm-hmm.
agree with me on this. Humans are primates. You have human, gorilla, chimpanzee, and orangutan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We are the smartest of the primates. We're able to do things that other primates can't do. We
Correct.
evolved, you know,
Correct.
to what we are today.
Yep.
Okay. But we're a primate, and our genes structure is 98% the same.
Exactly.
So why couldn't Dogman be similar to that when it comes to the different breeds of wolf that's out there within that species, like we were able to. But there again, there's a possibility they might have been a little bit genetic setup, with us evolving the way we did by a little bit higher power.
Right.
Okay. So it's a possibility. But
Yeah.
those, I believe, are the two biggest strong theories on Dogman. Is that they were just a species that's happened to be smarter, better, more intelligent, just like we are with the primates.
Mm-hmm.
Or, this is some type of that was brought here and they went from a civilized community that could not cope, and they became more feral, which became more lethal.
Yeah.
Those are the only two possibilities I can possibly maybe come up with. Is there an extraterrestrial point to it? There could be, because there's a lot of evidence pushing that way too.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that it could either be a, distant offshoot of the canids that, fell into a specific niche where, they had an adaptation where they had to be bipedal, or an adaptation from a human lineage where there was just something kind of odd that's omitting, outside interference by any extraterrestrial thing. Once you employ that, then kind of all bets are off. Anything can pretty much happen at that point. So
there's we've had hair samples that came back, like unknown species of canine. Okay. One had primate DNA along with human DNA, along with unknown species of canine.
That's really interesting.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, with that particular set there, the lab verbally told us that. Okay. And they were going to send us the report along with the hair samples back. Okay? And they were excited about it. We were excited about it. It was like, okay, we have a hair sample that had, an unknown species of canine. It had some type of primate DNA in it along with human. Okay, so this is a whole new species of whatever it is. Okay. And it was found in Kentucky. So a week goes by, 2 weeks go by. I call. Okay, what is going on? Leaving messages. I haven't talked to anyone. No one's called me back. I get the hair sample sent back in the mail. And is God is my witness. Okay. There was a cast that was found with it, with the hair, the track. They sent it back. The track was shattered. The cast was. The hair was put into a sandwich baggie with breadcrumbs still in that baggie. So they contaminated the hair.
Right.
Purposely contaminated the hair and busted up the cast that was found with it. Okay.
Right.
And, they never would return any of our calls, never gave us anything. So I don't know if there was another power that got involved in that, or someone in a higher department said, this is something we need to keep a lid on, but, you should never said nothing, to them about it. But yeah, that was, I was angry. I was to the point that I was ready to file a lawsuit over it, but they would have killed me on the lawsuit. They would have, I would have put out more money and lost more money on it. But the point of it is the fact that they contaminated the hair, purposely contaminated the hair and busted the track up was I was very angry about that. And that was 100% deliberate.
Yeah.
100% deliberate.
That's
because
uncalled for.
Well, because we know the cast was broken before it was shipped, because it was put in a larger Ziploc bag.
Right.
That if it was full, at one whole piece, it would never fit the bag.
Right.
Okay. So we knew they destroyed it prior to shipping it. And so the thing of it is, I don't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're okay.
But they packed everything.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it so crazy. So we knew it didn't get broken in the mail.
Right.
This was something that was deliberately done prior to it being shipped.
That's just wrong.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say I'm a field investigator and I am looking for physical evidence of a dogman. We're pretty sure that a dogman has been out there. Mm-hmm. What am I looking for in tracks, and what am I looking for in hair samples?
Well, you want to look for hair.
Okay.
Most of the dogman hair that we came up with is very, very long strands of hair, not real short, but very, very long. A lot of it's kind of curly a little bit. I always tell people, definitely when you collect it, put it in paper. Don't put it in plastic. You want to look at the tracks. You want to look at the movement on what this thing was like. If you find tracks going into a tree line, as it's going into a tree line, that's where you would most likely find your physical evidence, okay, of hair. So you want to look there. You want to go very, very softly going in, and trying to find as much hair as you can, and find out, like, track wise, did it step on something that, or like a rock that probably could have, cut its foot? Is there any blood, in the tracks? Try to preserve the best of the tracks that you can, because hopefully there'll maybe be some type of a dermal ridge or something like that on that. Mm-hmm. What I tell people too, I'm working on a new book. I've been working on this thing for a few years because there's so much detail involved in this.
You have my sympathy. I know what you mean.
So what it is, basically, if you find a body, mm-hmm. the protocol on what you should do. Okay.
Yep.
And this is opinion. I am not an expert. Okay. But one thing people need to understand, okay, is that when you find the body, was it on federal land, state land, county, city, okay, private, okay? There's not a whole lot of land out there that don't belong to somebody.
Right.
Okay. So, and you have to look at it. If you remove the body, okay, that's theft. You could go to jail for that. Okay. And trust me, when it comes to a case like a body, they're going to throw your butt in jail for theft. I mean, you can walk into a park, a city park, pick flowers, okay, and you can go to jail for that, for theft. You burn wood laying on the ground in a state park, you can be prosecuted for just burning wood that's already laying on the ground. Mm-hmm. A lot of parks will tell you can't do that. You have to bring your own wood in. And if it's on federal land, they're going to nail you hard. Okay? So I tell people, you got to sit there and pay attention to where you are. For God's sakes, don't mutilate the body. Don't cut off the hands. Don't cut off the head. Don't mutilate the body to get evidence, because they're going to nail you for mutilating an animal corpse. Mm-hmm. Okay? And they're going to nail you hard for that, because you're going to have so many loonies out there that's going to make sure you get prosecuted for that, because they don't know if you were the one that actually killed it or not.
Right.
And that's one of the other charges they're probably going to throw on you. So there's a protocol. Okay. The best thing to do is take hair samples from different parts of the body. Mm-hmm. Okay. Take a nail clipping, from the foot, from the hand, if you're going to remove part of the body, remove a tooth because that's where the DNA is,
Right.
you know, but do it to where you're not damaging, the body in order to remove the tooth. I tell my people, carry a bio kit with you. And what
Mm-hmm.
the bio kit is, with syringes and I can't remember, there's little um, tubes they put the blood in when they collect your blood. It's got a
Kind of like a pipette or a
yeah,
syringe.
yeah, where they have a little thing on the bottom to keep the blood from clotting and things like that. You can
Yes.
ask your doctor. Your doctor will give you some. That's what I did. And they gave me a bunch of them. In the syringes and stuff. You can probably get them anywhere. You know, at a medical store or some. Someone's got diabetes or whatever. Someone going through in vitro or something. Get all their old stuff.
Right.
But get blood samples. Okay, hopefully it's not coagulated or anything. Where it's all hard or anything. Collect the blood samples. You want to have paper, white paper. You want to have a little ink box, for like an ink stamp, with a roller. Get the ink, roll the bottom of the hands, the foot, get a good print of the foot, the hand. Take hundreds of pictures of the body, head to toe, the fingers, the feet. Move the body on its side, on its back. I mean, just get pictures all over the place. Then, once you got all that physical evidence, don't call the police. The police are not going to know how to handle it. You call, the forestry service or the DNR. You let them handle it because they're trained to do that. But get people out in the field hiding with video cameras, videotaping you bringing these people in to where the body is.
Right.
Okay, to protect you from being shot in the head, left out in the woods.
Yeah.
Or them denying the fact that they never recovered a body.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a whole protocol thing that you should do. And like I said, I've been working on this book for like years on just talking about how to go about doing this, how to check to see if who the land belongs to. What are the laws as far as removing stuff from property, and can you get away with it? And if you by any sake is able to get the body out, okay, don't get a medical doctor to look at the body, get a veterinarian to look at the body, or someone who is a biologist or someone who is different from a medical doctor.
Right.
Okay, a human doctor. That's who you want to look at the body, and let them look at it, let them examine it, get their opinions, and find out if they're willing to go public on this, and then you can release it.
Yeah.
The way, how you want to do it. But in a way, if you release it, and you do it the right way, okay, to where you're more protected, through the media and stuff like that. A lot of times these states and counties and federal government may not go after you because it will make them look bad for doing it.
Yep.
Because now they're hiding something that's out there. So there's different ways you can go about doing it. But when you're writing a book about it, it's just you got to make sure you do it in the right way and say it in the right way, so where people understand. I hate to use the word layman's term, but that's like it's the best way to talk about things like this.
Yeah.
When you start getting into using big words, people don't understand. They have to look it up there. It's nuts. So
I feel for you. I'm working on it. You can see on my deal right there. It says Robert the Entomologist. There's a series or volumes of books that I'm working on right now that's called Entomology 101. And basically what it is I've taken cryptozoology, ufology, paranormal, and put it all under one umbrella.
mm-hmm.
And what it is how to research and investigate all anomalies and the protocols that you're going to use for doing that, what evidence is, what evidence is not, what you need, what you don't need, the legality of all of it, and it's volume by volume. I mean, one whole volume is evidence.
Well, yeah,
You know?
and that's the way I'm doing mine. But it's like, but there's when you think you got it done,
Yeah.
you're not, because there's more stuff you need to put up there, and then something that turned out to be a chapter turned out to be 3 chapters.
Oh yeah.
And then it's like, well, maybe that might be too long. Maybe I need to break it down a little bit. But more the information, the better you are. Okay. Yeah. But the problem with that, the more information you put out, it's up to the person to how much they can absorb and remember.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Without having the book with you out in
right.
public, or
right.
when you're out in the field. Right. That's the kind of thing, because you got to take notes. I mean, especially when you're in a field, you have to have a notebook so you can write everything down.
Oh,
everything
yeah.
that you see, everything that you find.
Yep.
Where'd you find it? Get your GPS on and jot that down. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with, when you deal with, finding the body, there's the whole protocol of just the body and what you need to do, as far as documentation, that takes up all the time.
Oh yeah.
That's the part that takes all the time, and how much you're gonna put involved. Take hair samples, like you said, from all over the body. It's the same thing with a Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. Take hair from all over the body. Take pictures of the genitals of this thing, the reproduction organs. The feet, you got to do all these different measurements, from mm-hmm. the hip to the knee, from the knee to the ankle, the foot. There's just so much stuff that's involved, with doing this, and you're trying to do it fast enough so you don't get caught.
Right.
And if you can bear the smell.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing too. Yeah. They smell bad enough when they're alive, much less when they're dead.
As they're dead. Yeah. One of the other things I talk about, part of your bio kit is the mask.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of these different masks at, hardware stores and things like that will block out. It has the filters that block out a lot of that stuff that, you'll still be able to see out of and things like that. But you have to have gloves, and you got to be very careful, especially when you're dealing with blood, dealing with hair, because you don't know what kind of diseases this animal has that affects on you. So there's like a whole major protocol, and just there's a lot that's involved, and that when you mm-hmm. start talking about collecting evidence. Yes, but you have to also understand too, you're dealing with something that is out of the ordinary that your body or your immune system may not be able to cope with.
Right.
Or when you go home, because you still got part of that DNA or evidence on you that's going to affect, a sick child, a sick wife, a sick in-law or something like that. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's involved in that. Well, and that's when I tell you got to have a bio kit, and it's a big bio kit, but it has everything in there that you need. The possibility of you running into one, a dead one is slim to nothing, but you better to have it with you and then find one and not have it with you.
Well, I mean, the same is even true of the structures when you come up. Let's say you come up to a den area,
mm-hmm.
and you didn't even find a body. You come up to a den area. Well, just the fact that living thing was in that den area, you are going to have that same biohazard issue mm-hmm. in that area. So if this thing has any relative link to us, okay, you're looking at the possibility of leprosy. You're looking at the possibility of smallpox. You're looking at the mm-hmm. possibility of different viruses and bacteria that could affect us that maybe right now they don't, simply because of the way our civilization is. but may have lying dormant with these things because they're not in contact with us. But once you make contact with it, you may cause a whole problem that you didn't know you could cause.
Right.
So that's why, yes, you're absolutely right about all of that.
Yeah. I mean, ringworm. People think, well, ringworm by, laying, on the road while it's raining. And, no, you could be planting in your backyard, and cutting down wood and get ringworm.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You can
yeah.
be, and like I said, what might be non-harmful to these things, but they can still carry these bugs and so forth, or could be hot, fatal to you. And especially when the body is dead, that's when it becomes more worse to be dealing with than it was if it's alive.
Yes, you're
because all that
right.
bacteria is more alive on that body being dead than it is on that body being alive.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
that's what I try and tell a lot of people too whenever I'm training them too. You kind of have to be a CSI, an FBI, and have the mentality of Batman kind of when you're out there, because you're your own detective. You have to think where nobody else is going to be thinking. Just like you said, you got to get in there and out of there pretty quick, because you're dealing with something that's not supposed to exist. And you have to keep in mind that you don't know whether somebody is trying to prevent you from knowing about this or not.
Right.
But act like they are.
Because there's other factors out there. If somebody found it before you and they're coming back,
right?
Or if the government, always think that the government always knows what's going on.
Yes.
If it's there and you find it, you better believe the government knows it's there.
Yeah.
And they may want it left there, to have all the other rodents eat off of it and discard it, and they'll come back and get parts of it, like the skull and things like that. So where it looks more like it was just a dead wolf.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not only that, the one dead one you find may be being protected by 5 or 6 live ones that are in the area.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay, so we've covered that. So now tell me about the North American Dogman Project. What made you do that? What made you form that?
Well, there was no organizations out there. There were only independent researchers, Linda Goffrey, C.J. Johnson, things like that. People like that. And I was like, man, I would love to put an organization together just to go out doing dogman research. And I came up with a North American Dogman Project. And it was just a group of us. It was about 2006 is when we came up with this. And we didn't even have a website. We didn't even post anything on Facebook. It was just, we were just conducting our own, research on reports that we've heard about and what was on the news and things like that. Okay. Then about 2016, 15, somewhere around there, we went ahead and, okay, we're going to go ahead and do the website. Then we found, a lot of people are really interested in, or like, hey, I'm in this state. What can I do to help? And it's like, hey, let's start a chapter there. And it just grew.
Yeah.
So we're getting, chapters in every state. We got chapters in Australia, New Zealand. We got chapters in most European countries. We got chapters in India, Pakistan, Africa, Australia. I mean, it just grew. It grew huge, and we're getting reports from everybody all over the country and all over the world, and it was really interesting. And then we had I think it was A&E that looked into us and had some questions. They're like, man, this would be great for a TV show. So they came down and talked to us, and then they go, okay, we're gonna do a show. We're gonna start filming for a show about Dogman and the North American Dogman Project. End up filming 4 episodes. Okay. And they got terrified with the stuff that was found. Okay, I mean there was a lot of good evidence,
Right.
a lot of good evidence that was found, and that really proved that this thing was legitimate.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And they felt that the people could not handle the truth. Okay,
Right.
because they said, when I first talked to them, they go, "Tell me how do you think, people should look at this show? How should they react?" Okay. And I said, "Well, I'm a pretty big guy. Okay. I want to watch the show. My wife tells me to take the trash out before I go to bed, grab the trash, open the back door, turn on the back light, look left, look right, run to the garbage can, put it in the garbage can." I said, "That's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what people want. People do not want to be entertained. They want to be frightened."
Yes.
Okay. That's what they want.
Right.
And we gave that to them, and they said, "No, people cannot, they can't comprehend what's on this." So they went to the U.S. Forestry Service and asked them and showed them the evidence. And there's like, "You can't put this on TV." So the show got canceled.
Oh.
I mean, and it's just like, they have all the physical evidence, they have everything. Okay. Everything. We still have the opening, like, sizzle reel
Right.
for the show. That is what we have. That's the only proof that we have that this thing actually existed.
Right.
Okay. And so the North American Dogman Project would have grown a lot more, and we would have got a lot more stuff if this show would have taken place. There's a reason why Bigfoot shows exist and Dogman shows don't. Okay.
Yep.
I believe that they know that Bigfoot is not a threat or a biological threat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, unless provoked. I believe they know that this is a apex predator, and this thing kills. Okay, and I know they know that, and they don't want people going out looking for this thing because it's not going to turn out right. If they do.
Right.
So that's my opinion on why you don't see a whole lot of Dogman. You'll see one episode, on a series on cryptozoology. You'll see one thing about Dogman, and I guarantee you that segment will be the highest viewed segment out of everything. Remember the show? I can't remember what was his name of it, but it was the Wolf Pack, about the dogman that was that held that family in their home up in Maine.
Oh, in Palmyra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the name of the show.
I know what you're talking about.
What the series was.
Yeah.
But that series, that particular show was the highest rating out of the whole season. That tells you how much people are really into this subject.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And they know that. So
that wasn't Paranormal Nightmare, was it?
Yeah. Paranormal Witness.
Paranormal Witness. That's where it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know, man. It's nuts. We need more evidence out there. I mean, if there was a series on it, okay, not saying us, but just some type of series out there, I think it would educate a lot of people. It will fair a lot of people, but yet more people will be more open about their sighting, and we'll get a lot more information, coming into the community. Now, the North American Dogman Project, our biggest thing, what we do is collect data.
Right.
Okay. Winter, summer, spring, fall sightings, time of day, time of the year, just different data so we can see if there's a correlation between this. And on our website, we have pie charts that sit there and show, which month throughout the year is the highest sighting, which season is the highest sighting, what the time of day is the highest timing, and location.
Right.
So that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We have boots on the ground. We have that, but we're not like most research, other dogman groups that just want to constantly throw stuff out on, Facebook.
Right.
This is what we found. This is, what we're looking for, or whatever. Yeah, that's good because you're putting information out, but there's a lot of questionable stuff that's put out there. And,
yeah.
You can't be that guy to question it in our type of organization.
Yeah.
Because it makes us look bad.
Yeah.
All we can do is, just either ignore it, agree with it, or give our opinion respectfully.
Right.
Okay. So, we have a lot of good information, a lot of good stuff. Because I'm telling you, a lot of our stuff ends up on different podcasts. And it's like, how did you get those pictures? How did you get that information? Which is ours. And, there's one really big website out there that's very big into cryptozoology and has a lot of viewers. And they were using a lot of our stuff that they took off of our website and put it in a story, but they didn't put it as if they were the ones that were reporting it.
Right.
Okay. They were putting it out as information, but they never gave us credit for it. And they've done this several times, and we had to sit there and say, look, we can prove these stories are ours. We can prove the pictures are ours because we have the information showing when the stuff came into our website.
Right.
Okay. So we know this, and stop doing it, or at least give us credit.
Exactly.
And sue us. We're getting views. We're getting the views. Yeah, you're getting the views because you're taking it from us and claiming it to be yours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's.
And it's a very well known individual, and it's a very well known website, and it's nuts.
Yeah.
And once if I was to tell the name, people would know, and they're like, yeah, they do it to us too.
Yeah. Yep. I believe I know who you're talking about. So
yeah,
we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've caught some flack over calling that same person out. So
yeah.
But anyway, I'm kind of in a weird position because I'm a podcaster, I'm a researcher, I'm an investigator. I also run a group. So I'm kind of in the position where I'm trying to get people to come on and talk, but I'm also having to defend and clear up misconceptions at the same time. So it makes it kind of tough because you kind of got a balancing act where you're trying to educate people, but not hurt people's feelings at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of tough because I do want to encourage people to continue to be a part of what we're all doing with cryptozoology, UFOs, and the paranormal. But then you have a lot of people who don't necessarily have their cheese completely on their cracker, and you're trying.
The thing of it is, no one wants to question anything.
Yeah.
Like without hurting somebody's feelings, because when you question somebody's research, they get offensive.
Yeah.
And Facebook is not the right place for it. And then, you're fighting with this person all because you didn't agree with something.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you get other people involved. And that's what the problem is in the dogman field. Okay. Yeah. There's people putting pictures up that are clearly shadow and light.
Right.
That is clearly something that is not what it is. It's just how shadow and light or sticks or whatever form that. And there's some that, there's definitely something there.
Yeah.
Okay. But you can't sit there and say, look, I don't know, because, for one, I'm not an expert. my
Right.
organization, we're not experts. If we don't have the answers to everything, so we can't really give you an opinion other than our personal opinion,
Right.
and we don't want to offend you. But yet, and that's what the biggest thing is. These people, they go out looking for Dogman and they find Dogman evidence that's not evidence, but they find Dogman evidence. I mean, you
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's nuts. They find an indention in the ground. Oh, that's a footprint. It could be, but it just looked like a rock fell there or something. I mean, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty of that. When I first got into the Bigfoot stuff, man, when I was out there, I would find an indention in the ground or a broken branch or a twisted branch. Oh yeah, that's dog or Bigfoot, 100%. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
And so was a lot of other researchers that were getting into it because you got so much obsessed with it,
Right.
and you got careless is the
Right.
best way to do it. But posting stuff on Facebook is not the best thing to do,
Right.
when it comes to, popping evidence on there,
Yeah.
unless you get something that, that is really clear on what it is.
Yeah. Well, I know on my group, I've got an area up in Missouri where we're doing Bigfoot research right now.
Mhm.
And I've been up there. We've heard the calls. I've got eyewitnesses that I've, interviewed and everything. And we've got game cameras up there, and we'll get some weird stuff on the game cameras once in a while. And I'll put it up on the group and I'm like, what do you guys think of this? And, I'll have them, talk about it or whatever. And I'll look through it too. And sure enough, I'll be able to pick out 9 times out of 10, it's pareidolia or something like that. Like the last one I put up a comparison picture and I picked it out. It was a deer that I couldn't even see the first time that I looked at it. It was the ass end of this deer pointing at the camera. And I was like, oh, well, I never would have seen that if I hadn't had the comparison. But it's a way of being able to educate people and show them that I'm still even after, 20 plus 30 years, I'm still educating myself as I'm going along with them.
Yeah. But a lot of this stuff too is, we live in a world that things are strange.
Oh yeah.
And you will get strange things on camera. We've gotten strange things on camera that we can't, acknowledge on what it is.
Right.
I mean, because it's they're we have one image on trail cam of this thing on all fours, but one arm was kind of like up a little bit, but the whole background was clear, but this image was just so blur, like it was just going like that, you know what I'm saying? And it was just really weird.
Yeah.
But you got the body of this thing, but the head was really, you couldn't tell if it was there, if it was or not, more or less. You know what I'm saying? It was just a really odd picture, and it was from a trail cam, and it's, man, it's just one of these things. I mean, this thing was definitely dark. It had hair on its body. It was very thin. It was very ape looking. But it was odd. And another example was I was filming about 3 years ago. I was filming a show for on Dogman for a TV show, and I was there earlier, and I decided to walk out into the woods, and this large branch comes flying at me at the same time I heard this growl, and I was walking this way, and I turned over to my right, and I saw this large object, hairy object, just dark, man, just fall right to the ground. So I took pictures. But what was really weird about this picture, this thing honestly shift changed is the best way to describe it. It went from a muzzled animal to almost to like a ape face, which was
Oh, wow.
really weird because in the pictures you can see it's very dog looking. It's got a muzzle, but at one point where there was a tree branch where it's laying on the ground, a tree branch came like this, and there was it was kind of like this, okay,
Yeah.
and its head was like right here, and you saw it perfect. You saw the eyes and everything, but its hand was covering its mouth like this. Okay. Very, very ape looking. So were there two of them? Or did this thing shift change? I mean, it was really weird. And, I got like a set of photos of this thing. I mean, it's really odd. But the network didn't want to use them. And it's just like, why not? Here's the timestamp. This is where I took the picture.
Right.
Why we're talking about Dogman encrypted? Why wouldn't you want to use this? And it's just, it goes back to that thing. Well, it's evidence. We can't use it.
Right.
Seriously, and that's what it is.
Well, let me ask you this, Joedy. Do you think it's possible that maybe Dogman is something a little bit more than strictly biological?
Could be. There's a very, very big supernatural element to it. Very big. Portals, shift changing, telepathy. We had this one couple contact us, and they were coming home from a trip. Okay. And they took a kind of a shortcut and where they're going like through the mountains and stuff. And they took a road. The GPS kind of like had them turn up this road, for some reason. And so they're going up this road and they're seeing like military vehicles, and they get up to the top of the road and it's kind of like flat where it kind of went into an area, right? There's lights, military vehicles, and they're pulling right up there and they see all these soldiers standing there. And they noticed that these soldiers had head like dogs. Okay. And at first they're like wondering, well, they're wearing masks, and then they realized they weren't wearing masks because the human that was standing there told them to go get the people in the car. And they came at him, and he reversed the car, went down the hill, and he said these things chased them all the way down the hill. And they were catching up to the car and they were banging on the car. And he goes, man, I'm telling you, I'm going down this road 60 miles an hour, and these things are running next to my car, banging on my car, getting on, trying to jump on the back of the car and stuff. And they were able to get out. But, are they hybrids? Are they extraterrestrial? It was one of these things, we get stories like this from people. And, we had this one where this woman was a UFO researcher and she'd been abducted, several times. And at one point she woke up and she said there was a werewolf type being standing there, okay, in her bed, wearing like a uniform. I got the drawing, which is really interesting. And he's talking to her, telling her, you really need to get out of the subject,
Right.
find a new passion, basically, and that was kind of like it. But she described it as, a werewolf. And he talked to her, I mean, have you seen the new Disney show, Skeleton Crew?
I haven't, but I will.
But there's a part in there with the pirates, and one of the pirates is a werewolf, which is, and it goes back to George Lucas, with his obsession with werewolves and space. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't know this. George Lucas is a Mason. Okay.
Right.
He knew a lot of people in NASA. Okay. A lot of people in NASA. And a lot of people in NASA are Masons. Okay.
Right.
So George Lucas went to his friends in NASA. Look, I'm doing a space show. Can you help me? Okay. George Lucas was able to see things that people in NASA who had security clearance weren't even allowed to see. Okay. So, perfect example. And there's a book by Richard Hoagland called Dark Mission, kind of explains a lot of this stuff. And there's a picture in his book that looks on the moon. There was a crash on the moon. There was a robot that was broken up. And there's a color photograph of the robot's head, and it's identical to CP3O's. I'm not kidding you. If you Google Richard Hoagland's Dark Mission robot head and look in the images, you'll see it.
Okay.
It's identical. And there was a picture floating around of a spacecraft that was in a crater on the moon that kind of looked a lot like the Millennium Falcon. Okay. So there's a lot of that stuff. Right. Now, when George Lucas did the bar scene, he had Jim Baker make 2 werewolf masks for that scene. All right. Jim Baker was the guy that made Harry from Harry and Henderson's. Okay. So he had him make these 2 Pacific style werewolf heads. Okay. And they could have got a werewolf mask and did it, but he wanted 2 werewolf heads. Well, why did he want 2 werewolf heads? All right. Why does he want these space werewolves? Okay. And when you look at some of these books that does illustration and stuff for like Star Wars, you'll see there's a werewolf wearing body armor in some of these books. And there's actually a Jedi that's a werewolf. Okay. Look, and so there's a connection there. Right. Now, in Star Wars was what, 1978, 77, something like that.
Yeah.
And there was reports of interaction with the alien species of canine in the early 70s. Okay. That NASA got in contact with somehow, but they were canines in feature. And I've actually met and interviewed a guy that was in the military. His job was UFO recovery, and he talked about a species of canine aliens that were canines that were basically hunters. And call them different other things and stuff too. But even Linda Godfrey spoke with someone very similar about the same thing, about a alien species of canine.
Right.
So there's a connection there, and there's a reason why they're in there, because George Lucas got information about it from NASA. So
there's a lot of links through history and through everything else.
A lot of links, yeah.
Links that together. Well, I tell you what, Joedy, this has been a really interesting conversation. And maybe at some time in the future we can do this again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it was a pleasure absolutely talking with you. And I'm going to let you cut out of here and get you some rest, because I know I'm going to have to get some rest too. Yeah. So I'm going to let you sign off, and I'm getting ready to sign off here. So I want you to take care. And everybody, I want you all to have a great night. And remember, lock your doors, lock your windows, check in the closet, check under the bed, because monsters are real and you never know when they're coming back. Good night, everybody.
Whispers in the twilight, darkness and the breeze, shadows move in silence, Mystery in the trees. Secrets in the moonlight, echoes of the past, journeys through the